is New Close-Up Deep Action. We created it to give the world 3 times fresher breath and eliminate up to 99% of germs. Maybe we went too far. There's an outbreak of freshness. Now the best ever from Close-Up. 3 times fresh.
Tuesday was a traumatic day. It is not easy to face that type of panel. We had our disagreements. The consequence was that I take a little journey and a little rest. It is unfamiliar surroundings. So we went and then we were given a place to sleep. At dawn, they decided to shift us. So it has been a very interesting experience. And for me, some of the things that have happened have been inspirational. I met a group of young men, 18 of them. I was the 19th prisoner in the cell. And these were guys who were hungry. They were dirty, they were sleeping on the floor. But in the evening, they would sing and thank God for having taken them through the day. And at dawn, after cockroaches and bed bugs and mosquitoes, they will wake up again and sing and thank God for the night. It was an inspiration. Now for this type of movement, it would have helped because I really at some point did not feel secure. Okay, I can say the first time they moved me, I was deeply frightened. In the night, 2:45 a.m., men with guns picking you up, traveling in the night, parking in dark places. It has not been a very pleasant experience with regard to some of those aspects. Not very pleasant. I must use the opportunity to commend the official warders. You see, they did their best to keep me comfortable. Obviously, you could see that there was an unseen hand manipulating to move me from place to place. But the people who were on the ground and had to work with me, they were going through the same suffering that I was.
There is a problem, and we should not pretend that there is no problem with the economy. We have a lot of serious concerns about the way the economy is going, and the economy is in tatters, and things are getting worse. Government is no longer in denial. There is now consensus that the economy is in bad shape. The reckless expenditure of the 2012 election year are now catching up with all of us. And every Ghanaian saw how money was used during this last election. Unfortunately, it is the ordinary people who now have to bear the effects of the bad expenditure behavior of the Mahama administration during the 2012 elections. In 2012 alone, the NDC administration illegally overspent their budget by 4.8 billion. With hindsight, the government now realizes that they have misconducted them.
In spite of the economic growth, it has not been able to generate employment. And we think strongly is the generation of employment that can bring about, instead of inflation targeting, which has become quite something. We felt that we needed to look at homegrown policies as against depending on almost always this guidance from the Bretton Woods and the foreign agencies, which has really not helped us. And the level of unemployment in the country is really alarming, and it's becoming a time bomb. It's not only Ghana. The level of young people without jobs. We are told about between 250 to 280,000 young people enter the labor market every year from our academic institutions. There are no job openings. So we are asking government to ensure that the growth in the economy should create jobs and government should place premium on job creation, the kind of intervention that will lead into job creation in the country.
For a developing country, I will opt for a managed deregulation. A managed deregulation in the sense that we need to hold this country together as a political entity. We need our social cohesion not to be disturbed by market forces. And therefore, I make the proposition that even with deregulation, petroleum prices must sell at the same price across the whole country.
With deregulation, what's going to happen is, like I said, businesses definitely should drive the policies and not politicians. Businesses should drive the policies and make sure the policies work for the investment to come into the country. This country needs a lot of investment. We spend over $4.5 million of importing petroleum products, which is almost a third of all the foreign currency that we earn. And as such, we should encourage private investment. Otherwise, if government is supposed to spend this money, it's going to stifle the amount of money banks can lend to private sector, one. Two, it's going to stifle the amount of money government is going to have to do other infrastructure areas where private sector will not be able to participate.
In the course of your duties, you'll be confronted with issues of conflict of interest. In many cases, people have been confused how to proceed when confronted with such conflict. There are issues that might be accepted in our traditional cultural context, but under the ethics of governmental office are unacceptable. The code of ethics must serve as your guide to do the right thing and to do things right. This code of ethics must be seen as a strong prima facie reason to err on the side of caution, especially in situations of ethical conflict. This must therefore be seen as an expression of my abhorrence of unacceptable behavior by government officials and indeed amongst the generality of our population. As President, my view is that corruption must be prosecuted when detected. But first and foremost, we must prioritize prevention of corruption. We must put the systems in place that prevent people from acting in a corrupt manner, or that when they have acted in such manner, they are promptly identified and dealt with. One of the most important ways to prevent unacceptable conduct and abuse of office by public officials is to demarcate the ethical boundaries within which the actions, inactions, and decisions taken by any of us can be deemed to be acceptable or unacceptable.
And I say a very good morning to you and welcome to your most authoritative news analysis show, Newsfile. On Newsfile, we put Ghana first. I am Samson Ladi Ayenini. The economy is in tatters. The economy is in intensive care. The economy is in serious crisis. Ghana is broke. Let's file for bankruptcy. Try remembering the other tunes. But why can't government accept the bitter truth and fix the economy? Or this is purely another political gimmick. Citizens being treated to a repeated dose of opposition jaundiced verdict of the economy for political point scoring. Dr. Anthony Akotosei and Fifi Kwete, can they divest themselves of NPP, NDC petty politics in diagnosing the economy and making the true and faithful prescriptions this morning on the show? Second, global watchdog Transparency International and their local partners indict Ghana once more of widespread corruption. As always, it's real perception, not the same as real corruption. Abi, President John Mahama launches a book, his first coup d'etat against ministerial corruption. Will a JDM Code of Ethics book do the trick where a Jack Accountability Office failed? It's a book versus office corruption fight in Ghana. And very finally, when the frog in front falls into a pit, Those behind tread cautiously. But Sir John and Co. are no frogs. And Ken Kranchi, should he listen to his lawyer's counsel to be tempered and measured to avoid communicating the sin of contempt a second time? Does he know that those who pleaded for mercy for him may not be able to write more letters to the justices of the Supreme Court? We'll look at these three broad issues on the show this morning. And I promise you an interesting, very informative and educative edition. As always, Samson Ladi Ayenini is my name. We'll take a quick break and we'll return to start the show in earnest. You're welcome back. And this show is coming to you live from the multi-TV studios. This is your Joy News channel, and this show is being watched by millions of people across the globe. And you're listening to us on Joy 99.7 FM and over a dozen affiliate stations across the country. It is sponsored by MTN everywhere you go. Bank of Africa, as strong as a group and as close as a partner. And Lipton, inspiration from nature. My guests are seated, regular panelist and editor-in-chief of the New Crusading Guide newspaper, Abdul Malik Kwekubako Jr. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, my brother.
And Nana Ato Dazi is a former chief of staff and a lawyer. He is presently working on the Supreme Petition on behalf of the third respondents, the NDC. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right. Then you have the Honorable MP and former Minister of State in charge of Finance, Dr. Anthony Akotose. He's also the chairman of the NPP Finance Committee in Parliament. Good morning, Doc, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Is this your first time on this show?
On this show, yes.
All right. Thanks very much for having you. And the Honorable Fifi Kwete, he is a former Deputy Minister of Finance. Now he's Deputy Minister of State in charge of Finance, Financial and Allied Institutions. Minister of State in charge of Financial and Allied Institutions. Good morning and welcome.
NMP for Ketusa.
Thank you very much. All right. Now, this morning, as you already know, we have a lot to deal with, but we want to start to look at the diagnosis that the opposition New Patriotic Party has made about the Ghanaian economy. The summary is that the economy is in tatters. What does that mean? Does that make economic sense? Is it politics or is real concern for an economy that is truly in tatters? And that is why you have Dr. Anthony Akotose here and Fifi Kwete also here. Well, I'll start with you, Dr. Akotose. You have made a very damning diagnosis of the Ghanaian economy. And your statement that you released, I want to read a portion of it, actually the preamble. You say that it was a hogwash of assorted patchworks and propaganda. And you are referring to the government's budget statement and economic policy for the 2013 financial year. And you say that, but it was presented as a set of remedies to give the nation a breakthrough, a new beginning, and to provide a bailout from the myriad of problems, including the huge public debt, the lamentable fiscal deficit, the humongous arrears, unbridled overspending, worsening unemployment, deteriorating utility services, and failing social services. Somehow, government managed to hope that the 2013 budget statement and economic policy would propel real national development in the various sectors. But you say, in the last 4 months, the true state of the economy is that it is in tatters. And I remember you some time ago to referring to the economy as being in intensive care. Okay, the question really is, how do you convince the millions of Ghanaians who are listening to us, home and abroad, that this your diagnosis is not a jaundiced one, and that it is not to score political points, but that it is a true and faithful diagnosis of the economy?
Thank you very much. First, I don't believe we need to convince Ghanaians. They live it. Let me take you back to when the president presented the State of the Nation. I don't know if you recall. We came out then and said what he has told us is not a true state of the economy. And we gave a press conference entitled the State of the Economy, the True State of the Economy. The reason we did that at that time, we were hopeful that the budget would then come and give the real story. That did not happen, and that's where our disappointment is. In April, when the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of Ghana gave out its press release, the truth came out. If you read it, you realize what we're talking about. They said business confidence index had gone down, consumer confidence index has gone down, the fiscal deficit for the first quarter was already above 3.8 billion. And of course, immediately the day after, the Minister of Finance himself came and said, look, really, we are in trouble. So it is not just MPP saying it. But we wanted, when we did it in February, we were hopeful that the budget would come in and address it. It didn't. Clearly, anybody that is living in Ghana will know that. Yesterday, it was dramatized by my colleague, Esiama, by saying there's no cash for MPs. Parliament, today, if you have to go and make copies, you have to go and buy your own papers to do copies. Now,
It was made to withdraw that.
it was made to withdraw the word broke to seriously challenged. These days, when people have problems, we use the word we are having challenges. It doesn't matter how you do it. Look, let me state the facts. And these are not the facts created by MPP. You have a debt of 9.5 billion in 2008. April 2013, it has gone to 38.5. 2008, you have a debt stock, or arrears of 1.8 billion, 2008. 2012, it is 5.4 billion. Deficit, 6.6% of GDP in 2008. In 2012, it is 12.1 and climbing. Current account balance, 7-8% in 2008, 12% in 2012. All the signals are going the wrong direction. Even the single-digit inflation that was being talked about in the last 4 months, it has been in the double digits. Just this week, we are told it's 11.4.
You call it propaganda single-digit inflation.
Yes, because it was not sustainable. You see, that is the whole point. Sooner than later, things will show up. Today, the exchange rate, the dollar, is heading towards 2.1. This is not good for NDC, it is not good for MPP, it is not good for CPP, it is not good for PNC. So it is not political. That is why we're calling the government's attention to it. So if they're not doing anything about it, they should. Because it was predictable. And a major factor for these issues is what happened in 2012. But it started in 2009. Government overspent its budget by 300 million in 2009. Only 300 million. 2010, it went to 800 million. Climbing. 2011, it hit 1.3 billion. But guess what? 2012, unprecedented, 4.8 billion over the Appropriations Act. It is illegal. Nana is here, he's a lawyer, he can tell me. The Appropriations Act says this is the ceiling. Don't go over it. Then you ask, so what happened to us in 2012 that made us get here? Some of it, when we did the hearings on the budget, started coming out. In our finance committee, we started looking at one sector, Office of the President's budget. And a lot of the agencies were overspending.
Government machinery.
Office of Government Machinery. And that cannot be good. That is where the problem is coming from. The sooner we deal with it, the better. And so what we are saying is not our making. These are the facts.
All right.
So
this is what I would like us to do. You have given us what you call signs of a troubled economy.
That's correct.
And you speak about the single-digit inflation, which you say is propaganda. You talk about the public debt,
yes,
which you say is worsened. You talk about the arrears,
yes,
all of which are causing unemployment to some extent.
Yes.
You talk about government indebtedness to state-owned enterprises.
It is in our paper. I didn't mention that it's in our paper. That's about
that is so.
3.1 billion.
Then spending outside the budget approvals,
yes,
fiscal deficit,
yes,
and declining economic growth.
That's correct.
I would want us to take them one after the other.
No problem.
And more importantly, to be sure that the diagnoses are true and reflect the practical situation on the ground. And more importantly also, what the alternatives are.
Sure.
Because I'm sure that is what Ghanaians are more interested in. Now,
so.
I'll take Fifi Kwete's very also brief preliminary remarks regarding this verdict that you have given.
Sure.
Now, Fifi, you describe it as jaundiced and that it is only a political game.
Actually, that's not a true summary of what I said. I did acknowledge that indeed there are serious challenges facing the economy. What I, however, said is that the criticism coming from our friends in the NPP is a continuation of a certain pattern of criticism that we have seen that has characterized our politicization. And we've done so from 1993 on a more, shall I call it, sustained basis, where MPP effectively criticized every single thing that was done as far as the economy of Ghana was concerned and every other segment for 8 years. And of course, when MPP lost power, when NDC lost power, NDC came into opposition. NDC exactly, if you call it, did exactly the same to the MPP for 8 years, between the year 2001 all the way to 2008. I'm saying that much of there is a grain, okay, of truth in those criticisms. The nature of our politicking invariably has tended to try to make, if you call it, mountains out of a molehill. That's a lot of exaggeration. And even where there is no exaggeration, the nature of the criticism has been such that the core issues invariably tended to be, should I call it, relegated from the center. And solutions that absolutely needed to be arrived at on a bipartisan basis. The reason being that the economy is so critical for everybody, regardless of partisanship. Those solutions invariably are not found. And I'm saying, after 20 years of this back and forth, there is a need for us to adopt a certain mature and more bipartisan approach to the issue of the national economy. Now, so that was the framework within which I was operating. I was not in any way in denial about the difficulties. We can actually go into those difficulties a little more in order to let the public understand what it is that we have. And therefore, we'll be able to look at together what the solutions really are on a sustainable basis. Now, a few quick things. It is true that at the close of 2012, Ghana ran a very heavy deficit. And that deficit turned out to be about 12% of our GDP. It is true that until the very last few months of the year 2012, I mean, the numbers effectively were pretty much better. In the last few months, things pretty much went out of gear. That is the reality as well. But to say that that was because there was incompetence and there was mismanagement is exactly doing what it is we have done in the past, which is simply to try and play the political game in order to be able to have an advantage. And that's also meaning running away from the real core difficulty. In 2008, when the MPP ran a deficit of 8%, the Takoto, not 6%, as you said, 8%.
It's been rebased, that's why it's 6.
No, I'm talking rebase.
Rebased?
I'm talking rebase. The rebase is 8. You see, when you mention the 6, what you really are doing is that you are, as it were, adding the proceeds of divestiture in order for it to, like we used to say, 15% old base, and then when you add the proceeds of divestiture, it comes down to about 11%. But the real thing is without divestiture. That's what we are doing. So we are likening like to like. We are comparing like to like. So it's actually 8% for 2008. At the time that we ran this 2008, the deficit of about 8% in 2008. Public sector wage, which really is a major issue in discussion here, stood at about 2.5 billion cedis on an annual basis. 2.5 billion cedis on an annual basis. At the time we were running this deficit of 12%, public sector wage has moved up about 200%. That's from 2.5% to 7 billion. Now, if you look at it just on a simple base, mathematical basis, if on 2.5 billion public sector wage, you are running, let's say, in terms of quantum, you're running a deficit, which in CD terms was amounting to about, let's say, 4.3 billion. If you were meeting up with 7 billion, simple mathematical calculation will tell you that what it is you were going to be ending up was going to be in the region of about 12 billion. We ended up something about 8 billion, which is high. But I'm saying that if you just look at it in that simple basis, but it's not the way to look at it.
Right.
The point to look at is this. When you have a situation where in an election year, you have to look for 7 billion to meet wages and the compensation package. And in that same election year, you have major developmental issue you needed to attend to, you clearly are going to have difficulty.
All right. Now, would take it this way. Dr. Akoto,
I've not actually addressed the single digit and all that.
Yeah,
so
we're going to take them one after the other.
Okay.
First of all, I'd like us to, if we can, and I hope that Nana Atodazi and Kukubako will agree that we'd like them to digest, the bigger issues in here, and then I'll come to you subsequently. Now,
on the same matter.
On the same matter, to take your brief comments on it.
We have the layman's approach.
That is it.
And not allowing
layman's approach.
We seem to have a problem with the economists and whatnot take hold of the
because of course they are talking a lot of language that the ordinary person may not be able to appreciate, but it's important.
We don't interfere with
That's the point. All right. So Doc, can we look at public debt together with government indebtedness to the SOEs, and perhaps add the arrears that you're talking about.
Right.
The public debt, the arrears, and government's indebtedness to the state-owned enterprises.
SOEs and then the arrears. Okay.
Exactly.
You want us to provide further and better particulars?
That is so.
Okay. Let me start with the issue of public debt. Ab initio, let me state that borrowing per se is not bad. But if you recall, in 2000, the reason we went HIPIC, because we were choked with debt. All the money was going to service our debt. And therefore, that's why we were called highly indebted country. It has implications. But look, what we are saying is that if in 4 years, each year you add 6.4 billion to your public debt, it does lots of things. Let me focus on the domestic economy. The government projected to borrow 2.7 billion cedis in 2012. It ended up borrowing over 7 billion. What that does is that, number one, it drives up interest rates. So you'll see that between 2011 2012, the rate on the treasury bill went from 11 to 23%. Businesses, if the treasury bill is at 23%, it means businesses are going to borrow at a higher premium, 29, 30%. That drives up the cost of doing business. It cannot be good for us. That is one of the issues we are raising, that look, when you are borrowing, be careful, because this is what you do to your domestic businesses.
The bigger picture, you say, is that the Mills Mahama-led administration inherited a total public debt of $8 billion. Okay, $8 billion. Or
9.5 billion cedis.
Which they had described as profligate spending by you.
Exactly.
And that, as we speak,
they have gone
that has escalated to
38.5
billion Ghana cedis.
Yes.
So the ordinary person who is listening is asking, what is all this about?
That you are essentially borrowing to live in your home. In your home. Every time you have a problem, you just don't go to the bank and borrow, because sooner than later, they're going to come and call up for you to pay. You might not be able to pay. You collapse businesses, etc., etc. You want to promote domestic business. One of the things that they need is capital. If you go out as a government and take the bigger chunk, they will not get any. If they get any, it will be very expensive. What do? They turn out and pass it on to you and I. It will end up as higher prices. It is not good. Now, don't forget, this does not even include the 3 billion Chinese loan. It does not include the 1 billion loan that we are going to borrow on the Eurobond market.
How do you increase something that's not yet been
collected? Yeah, but I'm saying that it is coming. So you have to see how it's going to affect you. And in fact, part of it is going to be used to retire expensive debt. See, so you cannot go on forever. The government should stop and say, all right, let me go to the Chinese loan. For example, we are going to borrow 3 billion and we are paying 1% commitment fee on the undrawn balance. We are letting the government. It cannot be good. Because if you are not ready to absorb the loan, don't borrow it. Last year, we paid $30 million on commitment fee. And do you know how much we've gotten from the loan? 192 million. So this year, if we don't get any, it means we are likely to pay $28 million on the undrawn balance. Such a structure, we are advising the government, cannot be good for us.
Why are you complaining about something you approved in Parliament?
Well, Parliament approved it. We raised the issue. It's a majority. It's a majority that drives it. And it is not too late. That's why I'm raising it now. We will pay on commitment fee on the undrawn balance. It cannot be good. Because the government is not ready to absorb all of it. So why go and say, give me 3 billion when I'm not ready to absorb it? It is a bad deal. Right. The government should immediately renegotiate. Because 28 million this year to add to 30 cannot be useful for us. And you know that the president has advised the Minister of Finance to look for other sources, which implies that nothing is probably going to come this year, and therefore we are likely to pay. It cannot be good, and that is not politics.
But you say that your major concern is not that the borrowing is being used profitably. Your major concern is that the borrowing is rather being used to pay huge, dubious judgment debts.
Well, part of it,
and you refer to Sofoton and Wyoming matters.
And especially when it's taxpayers' money. You don't tax. Now the government has brought taxes. We know that it is not good to spend 50 million on guinea fowl development. Nobody can dispute that fact. That money was spent in November 2012. November 2012. What was it for? The government itself has instituted investigations into this matter, isn't it? So we are saying the same thing. Okay. Jeddah, overspending in Jeddah over 200 million. The government is instituting investigations to that matter. Those type of expenditures cannot be good. The Supreme Court has said that money should be collected. So it's not me saying it. It is bad expenditure. And we're saying that use it for infrastructure. We agree with you. Use it for education. We don't have any problem. Use it for hospitals. We don't have a problem. But when you use it on such... Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example from the government's... This is the report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of Ghana Public Boards, Corporations, and statutory institutions. Government itself has money. Huh? Just give me a minute, I'll quote.
Well, your views and comments are welcome on this show. 1422 is a text line. You can also post your comments on our Facebook wall. you can also send a mail to newsfile@myjoyonline.com. We'll receive them.
In paragraph 9, government itself, the Auditor General is telling us that there were cash irregularities in 2011 in these corporations to the tune of 1.96 billion. Now, come on. This is not politics. Go after this money. Recover. Cash irregularities. Which boards are they talking about? All the states, public boards, corporations, and other statutory units. You have 1.96 billion, and you are bringing additional taxes to collect only 300 million. It cannot be good.
I see. So hold on there. And in respect of public debts,
Yes.
that's what we're talking about.
Let me go to you mentioned the SOEs.
I think it may be good if we took it from one point to the other. Otherwise, other things will be mixed up.
Okay.
Now, Fifi, how do you explain to Ghanaians how government came about this huge jump in the debt, the increase in the debt?
You know, as I said, we need to get back to the core of the discussion and as much as possible leave the periphery. Okay, if we are looking at a deficit that is in the region of about 8 billion, and our concern has to do with the fact that 15 million was used for Guinea Fowl project, not to justify it, but obviously that is so peripheral. That's nowhere near the core of the discussion that we are undertaking. Doctor admitted that the issue is not with borrowing, but the issue has to do with what it is the money is used for. Now, if the issue has to do with what the money is used for, then Doc actually should be applauding the NDC government, because the NDC government borrowing has substantially been for infrastructural transformation of our country. It's not the case that NDC went to borrow money to pay judgment debt. That is what I call typical petty politicking, which we all do. But please, let's get serious. When, for example, the NDC government borrowed about raised 445 million in 2010. Okay, on using a 3-year, 3-year bond. We used in order to be able to salvage toll, and at the same time help put Ghana Commercial Bank into a steady scale. That was not money that was used for profligate purposes. That was for serious money. That's serious money raised for serious purposes. And incidentally, Dr. Koto would know exactly what actually brought about that toll difficulty. It was one of the things that the NPP left behind, and we went about doing it. When we raised hundreds of millions in order to be able to cater for the Gang of 4 project that the NPP started in 2008, they actually didn't even have any idea where the financing was going to come from. That was serious money raised, okay, by the people of Ghana in order to be able to take care of vital infrastructure. When you go raise 250 million from China Exim in order to be able to put up a water plant, I mean, if you call it a water generation plant in Bong, that is not money that is being used for if you call it for playing purposes. That's a serious money being used for transformational purposes. Now, so it's important for us to distinguish between real serious business of government and some of these, should I call it, as I said, I mean, playful political pain. I mean, let's set it aside. There is no nation that has made a transition from being a developing country to become an advanced economy without seriously undertaking the transformation of economic infrastructure. NPP has severally spoken about how within the space of between 2001 and 2008, they were able to achieve solid growth for the economy. And that's the truth. Consistent growth was recorded. But that was not the first time. The consistent growth actually started way back in 1984. In fact, between 1984 all the way to 2013, the country Ghana has consistently recorded positive growth rates. And that is a story, and the people of Ghana and all the parties that have been in charge of the government of this country must be applauded for doing a good job. Now, what I'm saying is the growth registered by the NPP between 2001 to 2008 were on the back of sound platforms and sound foundations that were laid before the NPP came into office. And in the same way, between 2009 up to 2012, the continuation of that growth that was seen by the people of Ghana was also on the back of what the NPP contributed between 2001 and 2008. I'm saying we need to start on a mature basis to accept some of this. Instead of stopping, it doesn't mean that we are going to have an agreement of everything. The core essentials we must agree upon. If, for instance, NPP, for example, took 750 million from the international financial market. If part of that money was used, for example, for purposes that do not bring about fast transformation, we should be able to criticize that. But those of them that went into infrastructure to help the transformation of the country, we must be able to applaud it. Some of the money that was raised, 750 million, some of it didn't go for purpose of transformation or for infrastructure. So we must learn from that. And on the back of that, that's why when we are going for 3 billion, we want to make sure it is purely going for real economic infrastructure in order to transform the country. Now listen, I said before that you either want to invest in that transformation for infrastructure in order to accelerate the growth, that will bring about a higher income, that will reduce poverty, create jobs for your people, and bring transformation to your economy. If you're not ready to do that, and you want to wait until you raise taxes domestically in order to see that transformation is going to take what you call decades, and you will not see it. Especially for a nation that has just discovered oil. And that needs to be able to do vital investment for example, gas infrastructure, in order to be able to use that gas to be able to power, to bring electricity that will transform what you call the adequacy of energy to bring about greater investment in our economy. You need to be able to do that.
The argument is that the oil money is actually bonus for you and should be a reason why you should not be seen to have borrowed as much as you have borrowed and continuing to borrow.
There again, it's a completely erroneous perception. Erroneous because anybody who is very close to government, and of course, Dr. Akuto say knows very well. Now listen, over the first few years, of the production of our oil, the volumes we are looking at are not exactly that substantial. And the quantum of money that is expected is not exactly the kind of money that will be able to build all the infrastructure in our country. Then again, we also have a clearly defined what you call Petroleum Revenue Management Act that gives a formula as to how the money should be used. You cannot take all of that money and then use it for just one project. Because there are other areas that you must make sure the money goes. Some of it is going into what we are calling a heritage fund for the future. Some of it must be set aside for stabilization in case there are difficulties. So that's the way you go. So I'm saying that we should get back to the core basis. Listen, it used to be fanciful in the past, to try to talk about huge death talk in order to be able to scare people politically so that you can win election. It used to be fanciful. NDC did it, NPP did it. I'm saying it's time, let's grow out of it. Let's now let the discussion be based much on the composition of the debts. What is the money really being used for? Is it really good for the people of Ghana that this particular sector receive what you call funding for transformation? If we agree, let's do so. But simply to say that, it's huge, no, that's not the way to go. And it is true that it's not simply about the composition, it also has to do with what you call debt sustainability. But Doc knows that we are not at that level where we can say we are unsustainable in terms of our debt. It is true that if we continue to ramp it too quickly, we will gradually reach there.
All right.
But the difference between now and the past is that we are also in a state of higher, accelerated growth as a country.
All right.
And that means that our GDP is going to expand. And the more the GDP expands, your debt sustainability becomes far better than what it is.
Okay. I'm a bit surprised that this is coming from Fifi now saying that now it's time to stop the
I've said so.
propaganda.
I
think it's a good.
I've said
it's
so
a good. But Fifi, first of
I
all,
quote him. He started by saying that there is a grain of truth in these criticisms, but he's looking for a more mature and more bipartisan
But that is
approach
precisely
to
the point
solutions.
I've been going on. That's why I brought the Chinese loan. Fifi, by the way, just so that you don't realize it's playful. When I took the guinea fowl matter, it's a reason. Because the money was borrowed. I'm pointing the 15 million. Government borrowed 200 million, and part of it was spent on the guinea fowl. I'm saying that is the type of borrowing you don't want. That is the point.
And your verdict is that that is a wasteful expenditure?
Yes.
Because you haven't seen the fruits of that project
There's no
yet.
fruits. Look, I gave the date. November 2012. We were supposed to have spent 50 million on guinea fowl development. What was that going to do for Ghana in November? And what is that? Look, the second one is the 33 million.
No, I don't understand. You mean what's going to do for Ghana in November?
Yeah, I mean,
is it time specific?
Why
And
spend
any investment?
15 million in November? What was that going to do for Ghana on guinea fowl development?
But Doc,
33
even as a January 6th, 2009,
I listened to you.
payments were being done when you were in ministry. No, I'm not interrupting you.
Yes,
I'm just raising that.
33 million, we found out, was spent on afforestation, half of which is destroyed. That is wasteful expenditure. Then when I took the $3 billion bond, I was also pointing out that my issue is the 1% commitment fee on the undrawn balance. That you will continue to pay money you are not ready to receive. So I'm preferring solutions. That's the path I'm going.
But he's referred to gigantic projects that are going on, which a lot of the borrowing has gone into.
But that is where where it is okay. The gas project, everybody is for it. We are worried that Sinopec is pussyfooting, as it were. But we point out to the government that this is how Ghana has a very poor implementation rate. So we know that. The Chinese have a very difficult way of giving out money. So it was not possible that we're going to get all the 3 billion at a time. So you go for 750 for the gas project, do it quickly, because it has returns. We are all for it. That is the kind of solutions we are proffering. But domestically, on the borrowing, the difficulty, and that's why I'm pointing out that the impact on domestic businesses is not small. So I'm saying, when your government goes out and has that appetite, it has to see that there's a cost. And the cost, yesterday, 2 days ago, I told Fifi, we were told by the BDCs, remember, that if government doesn't pay them, about 11 banks will collapse.
Okay.
That cannot be good
now,
for that.
Speaking about that, if I may just read this portion of your statement,
Yes.
and we'll continue from that point. This is under government's indebtedness
To SOE.
to SOEs.
Yes.
And you say that government is also hugely indebted to many state-owned enterprises,
Yes.
to the tune of over 3.1 billion Ghana
That's correct.
cedis.
That's correct.
As at ending December 2012, government's indebtedness to such petroleum sector entities,
Such as Bost, yes.
yeah, i.e. Bost,
1.5
GNPC, TOR, NPA, GC, PC, amounting to 1.5 billion.
Yes.
That is 15 trillion cedis.
Old cities.
The utility-related agencies, utility-related agencies like VRA,
Yes.
ECG, and GRIDCO are owned in excess of 1.6 billion Ghana cedis.
That's correct.
And then you say this figure does not include the total of 796 million illegal fuel price margins the court ordered government to refund to the consolidated fund.
That's correct.
I'll end on this note where you say government's indebtedness to the SOEs, which stands at 3.1 billion, and arrears to goods and service providers, which stands at 5.4 billion, bring all to a total of 8.5 billion.
Yes.
Therefore, it is tragic, but not surprising, that the public utility companies and businesses are collapsing,
Yes.
bringing with it job losses and rising unemployment.
This is
Is there evidence of this?
Exactly so. Ask VRA, ask ECG. That's exactly the difficulties they're having. The government chose politically not to increase, let's say, to have subsidies. VRA must purchase crude oil to, as it were, generate. ECG is old, and that is why they are complaining. It is not me saying it. So it has an effect, and we ought to be mindful of it. I remember in 2008, government spent almost over $400 million to purchase crude oil for VRA to generate. If its money is not coming, the generation capacity will create problems for businesses. We have been having this doom so for a long time. It is it is a real problem. So it is not just VRA being old. It has consequential effects on everybody, you and I.
So your critics will say you mention all of these difficulties in respect of electricity generation and the erratic nature of it, water supply and the rest.
Yes.
But you don't seem to acknowledge the efforts that are being made to, as it were, restore the supply or the electricity production.
That is not true. I'm bringing governments to attention on these matters because it has gone on for so long. And if we don't deal with it up front, it will continue. I'm worried that ECG, yesterday I had to use my generator for almost all day. It's expensive to me. But I'm just one person. It's the businesses who are losing. Some businesses are collapsing. So these matters must be addressed. Now, I don't know what solutions are being proffered. But I tell you, as I said, the government chose politically to have these, not to increase petroleum prices or have subsidies. It is not good that the BDCs are saying that if we are not careful, 11 banks will collapse. We don't want that. So how do we deal with that? So the government must realize that that is the cost. Now, if we want to collapse 11 banks, I don't believe the government wants to collapse 11 banks. But the companies must be paid. So how are we going to pay them? If you can recover 1.96 billion from the cash irregularities, you might be able to pay. But now you are taxing us when you have money. So we are proffering solutions. And when you say, we are saying, these companies are saying so. VRA is saying so. ECG is saying so. So it is not MPP saying it.
All right.
The Ghanaians saying it. And how do we all solve it?
And they are saying this for the first time.
No, they have been saying this for the last 4 years.
Oh, only 4 years. Only the last 4 years.
Last 20 years. It is getting worse. Last 20 years, but it is getting worse. And we must solve it. We can't keep saying that. Let me go back to what he said about the wage bill.
Okay.
It's important.
I needed to return to him because I'm dealing with time with the two of you.
No problem.
So that there is, equity.
No problem.
It's important.
Now Fifi, how do you also respond to all of this and the suggestions that all of this borrowing and debts that are arising is leading us to a certain state that this country will be in a crisis of unemployment situation?
Yeah, and that actually gives me the opportunity to partly, respond to a few of the issues that were raised earlier that I couldn't really touch. The deficit situation, as I said, largely came because we are dealing with a humongous public sector wage. That's the reality. Now, when it is that virtually every 100 cedi that is coming into the kitty, about 7 plus is going to meet just public sector wage. What it simply means is that you definitely are going to have difficulty meeting all your expenditures. It means you're going to struggle raising enough money to be able to meet public administration. You're going to have difficulty building capacity of people who are working within the public sector. You are definitely going to have difficulty meeting all the arrears and monies that are supposed to go to the local authorities, that's in terms of the district assemblies. You're certainly going to have a lot of problems meeting infrastructural needs. Because the most immediate concern, apart from the worker's salary, which is number one, has to do also with your debt obligation, which you must honor. So after you have honored those two, clearly you are going to have difficulty. Now, so all these things that are being, all these litany of things that are being listed, our friends in the MPP know exactly what the cause is. They know the reason. The reason is because a lot of money is going to meet this public sector wage. And therefore, clearly, at the moment, there's very little room to be able to meet all the others. But of course, they conveniently choose to call that mismanagement for political purposes. They know it's not about mismanagement. It's about the fact that the quantum has become so massive that when you are not, if you've not been able to raise taxes in this same year to be able to get additional money, clearly you are going to struggle. Now, even though they know this, the same people are literally up in arms against new taxes that are being brought. Meanwhile, having been in government, they do know that if you don't raise additional taxes in the immediate term, there's going to be difficulty. That's what I'm saying. There is obvious what you call political determination, okay, to create a kind of condition that will make it difficult for economy to be well, because somehow the paradigm within which you're operating is such that you must push your opponent to fail so that you will have the opportunity. As opposed to the positive paradigm where, listen, do the best you can because we believe our alternatives is superior. So you don't need to create conditions for failure in order for you to have an opportunity. Why? Because you have a set of proposals that you can put before the people of Ghana. That shows that even if you, NDC, are doing the best you can, our set of policies will be able to give the people of Ghana better alternatives. As opposed to this situation where, for instance, Dr. Akoto and the MPP clearly know that you cannot, in one breath, be faulting government, okay, for not being able to meet arrears, and at the same time, be blocking government from having what you call new tax measures that are supposed to be bringing money to the kitty. And yet, if government is unable to do that, you also fault government for going to borrow.
The argument in that respect is that the people are already reeling under such a heavy burden, and you want to add on to them. You don't do that.
Hold on. The monies that are being expended for the people. They're not being used for some entities that are from Pluto or Mars. They are being used for the people. The roads that are being constructed are for the people. The public sector workers are people of Ghana and their families and dependents. So as a country, if we need to spend money for ourselves, you see, sometimes we create this entity called government, and government is supposed to be detached from the people. Now, how do you make sure you raise 7 billion on an annual basis to pay workers? And at the same time, you are supposed to have enough money to do everything that you used to do. Roads, educational infrastructure, hospitals, and be able to service that, and be able to actually raise enough, create conditions so that jobs will be able to be created. You need to have additional revenue. Now, in the short term, what you have to do really is to be able to increase taxes. Because when people make it look as if in the short term, the solution is to be able to plug loopholes. 8 years in office. If loopholes were easy to be plugged, the NPP would have been able to show us the best practice and the best example. It tells you that it's not as easy. Talk is cheap. I'm not saying that we should continue as it were running away from some of the things that need to be done in terms of reforms. But the truth is this, and it's not limited to Ghana. It's beyond Ghana. Immediate solutions. If you go to the World Bank, IMF, you're talking now, I'm going to ask it to plug holes. They'll tell you that, listen, as for this one, let it be a bonus when you get it. But we are looking for practical solutions to be able to raise money in order to do what you got to do. So I'm saying, you cannot in one breath be condemning government, okay, for wanting to raise taxes, and at the same time be blaming government for going to borrow. Because there are only two ways you do it. You either raise the money through taxes or you borrow. You can't do otherwise. Otherwise, you literally have to decide that, listen, 7 billion, we are not going to pay 7 billion. So therefore, we don't want to have 500,000
They're
people
pointing
working.
you to waste. Cut the waste.
That's what I'm saying. That's easy. If waste were so easy to plug, why did they not show us the best examples of that in 8 years that they were in office? You see, it's easy. When you're in opposition, it's so easy to say, waste. Show us what you did in 8 years. Show us.
No, you have the mandate now.
That's what we are telling you.
Part of the reason is that the people have a confidence in you to have superior solutions.
Samson, when you have an immediate crisis ahead of you, you are not going to leave immediate solution and be talking about things that normally take what you call years to resolve. When you have a hungry man sitting right in front of you, this is not the moment to be preaching to him about the need for him to have better agricultural practices in order to have food in his house. You need to find money to feed him. We're talking about immediate difficulties. You need to find immediate solutions. Leakages and so on are things that you resolve on a medium-term basis. They are not immediate. I need to have money now to be able to not just pay workers of Ghana, but to be able to continue to develop the country, build roads, pay all the debt, money that we have borrowed, and so on. Develop the country. That is the way to go. But let me just go quickly onto the bit about. You see, sometimes when it is that we go extremely partisan, we also lose sight of the reality. 8.12% deficit that the NPP left in 2008. We left 12 percent deficit in 2012. But look at the real effect on what you call the macroeconomy. They are not the same. Between 2009, as a result of what we met, on a month-to-month basis, the CD was dropping 3% value on a month-to-month basis between January to June. Inflation jumped from 18 to about 21% within that same period. Portfolio investors were literally running out of this country like nobody's business because of the loss of confidence as a result of what was left behind in 2008. Non-performing loans in our banking sector was very high. That actually was creating difficulties as well. We don't have those problems today. We are not saying it's paradise today, but it's not the same. We don't have CD losing 3% value on a monthly basis for 6 months. We don't have it. We don't have inflation having jumped 3%.
In fact, the fear is that you are going back to that state.
No, just hold on. We've met that difficulty in 2009. And we were able to turn the economy and posted some of the most outstanding results this economy has seen. Now, he said what? I mean, single digit was not sustainable. I don't know what he really means by was not sustainable. If you can sustain single digit, the first time in our history, for a period close to 3 years, you can't tell me that was not something that was here to stay. The fact that temporarily we've gone out of it doesn't mean we cannot go back again. The reasons why we have gone out of it, we know. It's really because there is pressure at the moment because of the public sector wage. All that needs to be done is to be able to resolve issues about revenue. Once you can resolve the issues of revenue, you will clearly be able to bring it back again in line.
All right. Just catch a little breath at that point. And I want to bring in Nana Atodazi and Kwekubako. And Honorable, I'll come back to you. No problem. Right. So I'll start with you, Abdul Malik. When you hear of the diagnosis that the NPP opposition in Parliament has made, does it sound to you like is being suggested elsewhere that they are only interested at looking at where the economy is bleeding and hit hard at that point, ignoring all external factors and not also giving due recognition to efforts that are being made to resolve these problems?
Well, you know, I just love what is happening in this country today. I really love it. And also very excited that it is my brother Fifi who is here and leading us in this whole process of, you know, depoliticizing, demystifying politics as well as economy. The economics and economy. I'm excited about it because I think it's the way forward. It has been a position that some of us have advocated for some time. Maybe it won't benefit anybody to roll back and give classic examples of what was said by who and at what time. But otherwise, Fifi will qualify as one of the most, you know, the strong advocates of politicization of the economy and economics. And in terms of propaganda, I'll be honest, I have quite a lot of the things he said here. But because he's led us in a certain direction, I think I would accept.
I said 20 years of it is enough.
Indeed, more than 20 years.
No, I'm looking at the first.
Yes, but more than 20 years. Liman was a victim. Of the same thing. Achampong was also a victim. No. It's the culture. And that culture did not begin in the Fourth Republic. Why? We're talking history. I don't know why, whether there's an injunction on the time frame. Okay, I'm not too sure about that, but I agree. I'm going to focus on Fourth Republic. But I wanted to suggest that in terms of the culture, the political culture, it predates the Fourth Republic. And it has not helped Ghana at all. So I am happy because I think that we can make some progress. It's very difficult. Let me be honest with you. It's not going to be everybody across the political divide who will accept what we are saying. Because there are some who believe that, no, you did it to me, I'll do it to you. For whatever advantages one will get, however temporal. You know, so it's a very difficult exercise we are engaged in. But see, there's clear-cut consensus out there that the economy is in serious trouble. Take the MPP out, which is a political party that has been in government before. We've had a TUC lamenting and pointing to serious difficulties and challenges relative to the performance of the Ghanaian economy today. We've held the World Bank pointing to very serious difficulties with the Ghanaian economy. Indeed, the government itself has conceded, except they would want to say these are challenges. But whatever they are, it points to a troubled economy. Is it not too clear that in recent times we faced serious energy crisis? We face serious water crisis. Is it not obvious that at one stage mission hospitals even threatened or indeed embarked on a boycott of the national health insurance scheme? These were all symptoms of an economy that was hugely troubled. You see, it's education by negative experience. Pre-election, a certain picture was painted of an economy that was so buoyant, that was prosperous. Within a matter of 2-3 months post-election, reality check, showing that perhaps the picture that was painted, and that's why I say it's education for the Ghanaian people, that it is not everything that politicians say, particularly on the campaign trail, that we should take serious. It does. Those things do not reflect the actual reality. So to be honest with you, I don't think there's a debate as to the state of the economy. It's in critical, very, very serious stage. Fifi used to say was intensive care. Well, look, you see, the figures, inflation, interest rate, the value of the CD, all those things, how do they connect to impact on people's standard of living? For the bottom line, people are asking those questions. It is when you accept that you have a challenge, a problem, a difficult one, that I think you can proceed to resolve those problems. And it is so obvious to us that this is what is happening. The economy, look, wage bill. I hear this SSS thing. During the campaign, it was used as a propaganda weapon. It was used seriously to show one of the achievements of the ruling party as part of its campaign. I'm not too sure that they didn't understand the implication of that policy when they decided to embark on it.
And is it your position that it was wrong to tout an achievement?
In the way and manner it was done, I expect those who are doing that to have a sense of proportion relative to that achievement, to know the implications of the implementation of that policy, so as to know what to do and how to do things. I expect that. Because if suddenly you are telling me that, oh, that is part of the problem we are confronted with. The TUC has asked a very serious question. The T is the main? Yeah. Wow, that makes it worse. What he said makes the situation worse. Because I think it's just one of the problems. I would concede it's one of the problems on the surface, but it depends on how you handle it. Look, the TUC has asked a very serious question. That is why I said what he said is made the situation worse. What is the categories that go into the public wage bill? Because I'm not too sure everybody is under SSSs. Article 71 office holders, for instance, are not there.
Yes.
How many?
I don't know.
Yeah.
They are a lot, and it's not just the normal, but how much they are taking at different periods.
All right.
So it is not, we're not just talking here of the quantum in terms of numbers of Article 71 office holders. The TUC is asking this question. They are asking for clarity. And indeed, because of what Fifi has said, I think that whole question has become more urgent. We need to break it down.
Let me provide you some information. The 8.7 billion deficit of 2012, the excess wages is only 2 billion. Only 2 billion out of the 8.7.
Yes.
So it cannot be the main.
It cannot be.
It cannot be.
It cannot be.
Listen.
No, you can come in. I have no problem. I have no problem. We are seeking education and information.
Three major issues, accounted for about 80% of the deficit. And Dr. Askoto here knows it. And all of them have to do, again, with the people of Ghana. public sector wage, the first one. Subsidy, petroleum subsidy, and utility subsidies, the second one. The third one is domestic interest. 3.
Okay.
And all of it have to do with the people of Ghana.
To them
so to make it look as if this has to do with some kind of, like they said in their press conference, some kind of a campaign financing. That's not the truth.
No, but
that's not the truth.
Okay, there's some part of it.
We'll actually,
the people of Ghana.
We'll actually get to that allegation to wrap up the discussion for that part.
Subsidies, both in utilities and petroleum and domestic interest.
Okay.
That's what it is.
But
so to make it look as if some kind of campaign financing is wrong.
If we break it down to the sub-sectors, we may be able to tell if indeed it was a necessary expenditure or not.
Even domestic
because
interest,
this cyclical thing, it's been so. Election years, we have, with the exception of, I'm told, 2004, that was minimal.
Yes.
Almost all other election years, we've had this problem.
Yes.
Is it not back to quality of leadership? Is it not back to vision? Is it not back to the quality of management? What are we saying? That because it's an election year, we get this kind of burden consistently in a cyclical manner? No, we must question leadership now. We must question management. We must question vision. Otherwise, then we might as well give up.
That would be simplistic. Okay. Let me explain to you why it's
in my simple mind,
no,
yes.
No, I'm not saying your mind is
I want him to finish. So let him wrap up. Let him wrap up.
For instance, I've heard this thing about, for instance, the judgment death thing. It's been dismissed. I hear them dismiss it so much. But when you go into this Hansard, this is the finance minister, 2009, when he was presenting the budget. I want to quote, Madam Speaker, one of the burdens that this government has had to carry is huge judgment debts. How did these judgment debts come about? It is as a result of the failure of the NPP government to honor contractual obligations and the flagrant disregard to pay even when judgments had been given by both local and foreign courts and arbitration panels. In the circumstances, at the end of September, this judgment debt outstanding was about 560 million Ghana cedis, which converts to over 380 million. And a decision was taken by a ruling party to quickly defray this. It's turned out, subsequent events, that some of these judgment debts were of dubious validity. So when it's raised, it is not raised to say that, you shouldn't pay or you shouldn't have paid, or that it is too small or it is too big. Even though all those factors are important.
Okay.
It is pointing to the level, a certain mindset of a leadership that allows such a thing to happen. And we are talking here $380 million US.
All right. Sorry, but you have exhausted your 10 minutes I wanted you to deal with. But I wanted you to look at this from this other perspective. Coming from the street corner perspective. That the man on the street, putting yourself in his shoes, that this economy is really bleeding, that things have changed from what they used to be. Is that the case?
Things are worse today than they used to be. The government concedes that. I'm not talking of some other... Look, it's positives, negatives. It's the dialectical situation.
And the practical reflection is in
the last few months, because of the energy crisis, the water crisis, the deficits in the budget, expenditure overlapping, those things have created a serious challenge. Now, it is not an unsurmountable problem. It is not. We are not going to stand static. It comes back to the same quality of management and leadership, and the various options available.
I was asking about the indicators, for example. Is this the case that if I were buying a ball of kenke for 20 pesos, now it is 30 pesos?
I am a kenke man. My kenke is shrinking in size, but the price is the same.
Okay.
I'm a kenke man, a kenke man.
Let's hear Nana too on this.
Yes,
very briefly, so I can get back to them, and then they'll finish with that subject.
I think that we should leave the debate to the economists, but I don't agree that they must necessarily take the final decision. Because all the arguments my friends have been put it out beautifully. That's Dr. Akucha's say and Fifi. look, I had them 30 years ago, repeatedly. Every meeting we went, the Minister for Finance, Dotabe, whatnot, we've had it. We've had the same thing from the TUC down the line. We've had the same thing from teachers, you know. I think that Kweku came pretty close to the issue when he said that this matter should be put in perspective. It's a historical problem. We should find a way of dealing with the matter, except that at a point he cut him and stopped at what do you call it? Is it 2008? You know, and where what do you call it? Fifi could and all that. Yes, but it is
you can't help it completely.
Yes, but it's a real problem we're facing. It's the way we handle our economy, the challenges that we are facing, the kind of economy that we are handling. That's why I disagree. That people can go to Parliament and criticize another government as though what they are doing has never happened, or as though the crisis we're facing is never happened. I don't think it is fair.
You're saying that it is illegitimate on their part to criticize the government because it happened in their time?
No. What I'm saying is that, you know, in opposition you do just the right thing, and that's just, I believe, what they are doing. Criticizing and raising, what do you call it? No. Generally, they are supposed to be for responsibility. But I'm saying that I took a little time just trying to look at the history from, you know, Kume Preko. I was in government when we had a Kume Preko. What was Kume Preko about? I was in government when they had a Yabre, you know, demonstration, Semi Preko, all those things. I was also available in this country when we had all the CJA, Wahala demonstration.
And all of that is important in building a strong economy and a democracy.
Absolutely. But they were about literally the same thing. They were literally about the insensitivity of government. They were literally about the heated economy. The fact that we are unable to deal with our bills as and when they come. In 205 June, about this time, May, June, the CJA was preparing to have a demonstration on June 7th at Kumasi, you know, because among other things, teachers have not been paid for 8 months or 2 years. I'm from the lab. You understand? I mean, there are all these matters. But the point I'm making is that I think we should endeavor as a people to try and insulate some of the core issues, particularly in the economy, you know, about the economy, from the general political football, as it were, game that we play. You know, everybody playing it, boom, it's when it's the other side, then you kick it back. And I thought that's why I was agreeing with Kweku, you know, that I think that we should, as a people, just also sit down, the leadership, you know, on both sides, the bipartisanship which people was talking about. We should decide that certain things, you know, will not pick up in the public in that sense. We should also look at the role of Parliament, the oversight role of Parliament. When Dr. Akuta was raising these matters, yes, it's within Parliament, but it almost sounds more like for the wider public than Parliament's own oversight, responsibility. Public Accounts Committee, it's chaired by the minority leader.
But the process of putting the government on its toes or checking it,
yes,
should also be shared with the public.
No. I agree. I'm saying that, but there's certain. I'm saying that we should be able to draw a line by partisanship coming in. We agree as a people that there are certain things we will not put into politics. Okay. We won't play politics with, because they are the core problems that we face as a people. You know, and I'm saying that the role of Parliament, you know, should be deepened in this respect. You understand? Where are their finance committee, or I don't know where, you know, some of these issues. You see, why I'm saying this is that as we sit here, you see the beautiful interaction between Dr. Akutas and Fifi Kote. But let them get out to the platform. And you think that, you know, they are. But here in this room, they agree on some core matters. And that's what I'm saying, that let us agree, let us, you know, constitute a team, you know, on both sides. Let's have some sessions, some seminars, where we can say that, okay, we agree as parties, as, you know, people, that these areas, you know, the macroeconomic, whatever it is, these we shall agree. These are the core things. if the banks are going to collapse or whatnot. These are things that we should talk about together. Now, I hear the China, the CDB loan. Is it good? Is it not good? We must make an affirmation. To have 3 billion in the economy, it's worthwhile. You understand? There are challenges as to how those monies are to come in. Parliament was to sign something or to make some amendment. It was not coming. As a result, the disbursement will slow down.
All right.
Okay, you know what I'm saying? From my reading today in the internet, I hear 188.92 has been released. Is it good news? Is it bad news? So the gas project will continue. That gas project is critical to our economy.
All right.
You see.
So
I'm saying that there's a need for greater
on that note, I take a
yes.
few messages. I return after a commercial break to the two gentlemen to finish up with them. Now, this message is from Atam Imoro from Wellensi. He says the true state of the economy is as presented by the opposition NPP. The NDC government must faithfully admit its inability to properly manage the economy. This one, you have no name. Be bold enough to put your name out there. He says, I believe the current government wishes the total collapse of the economy. How can that be a wish of a government? Institutions with mandate of assessing Ghana's economy by hindsight have admitted the economy is broke. Government should remove its political lenses to see through their eyes. Bonti Benjamin writes, now that everybody is being forced, is being faced with the actual economic reality on the ground, it will be good for us if we think of restructuring our institutions and adding value to our resources, as Nanado used to crusade. At the time, Fifi Kwete and others were singing Idebi Keke hymns. Ghana deserves better, if not the best. Ibrahim Kopa in Tamale writes, the current economic predicament that Ghanaians are facing is absolute vindication of Yao Safumafo and co-description of the state of the economy. Hence, the government should come out with pragmatic solutions than hiding under the guise of the usual propaganda. J. Force Ferron writes that if you see Fifi Kwete apparently fumble while making his submission, then you should know that the era of propaganda is almost over. This is reality check.
Did he say fumble?
That's if you are seen almost fumble. That's what he said. His words.
Physically
Fumbling.
Kwame Mro writes, what is Fifi Kwete and for that matter the government telling us? That the country is not broke? Ask him what happened to the committee that was set up by Elvis Efri Ankara about JIDA. Are they through with their job? I think they are still on it. This one, Stephen Kwesi Champong writes from Ohio. He says, a government that puts the payment of judgment debt and rearing of guinea fowls as its top priority will definitely grind to a halt. That is exactly what we are witnessing. God help Ghana. And a final one from Samuel Brian Boabing Awoshi says, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know Ghana's economy is in tatters. As striking NDC communicators, ask striking NDC communicators, they will tell you. Thank you. We'll be right back after this break. Thank you very much for keeping your dials here on Joy 99.7 FM and for watching us on your multi-TV's Joy News channel. And this show is brought to you by MTN, Bank of Africa, and Lipton. Lipton, inspiration flowing from nature. Just make sure you get a cup of Lipton tea and you'll enjoy it. Now, I'm going back to my guest, but I want to read this text to begin the questioning. This one says, Kwame, this is Kofi Kwame. He says that I've already introduced you. I am glad the Honorable Akoto Osei talks about implementation challenges at every point in time since the NPP era through to the NDC era now. Both governments have had a cumulative concessionary donor funding of $4 billion under slow-moving projects being implemented by bureaucrats who don't seem to have any sense of urgency. Can Parliament, which approves all these funds and projects, sit up and exercise its oversight role with dispatch? That's a legitimate question, isn't it?
No, I think it's very legitimate. And sometimes, because I come from a political party, when I say those things, they take it as political. I want to take off from what I just said. This is not the first time Fifi and I are talking this way. In fact, before you came in, we were raising the matter about the banks, but for obvious reasons, I don't want to discuss it. Sometimes, I think it's who the messenger is. Some of the issues I'm raising, they are not partisan. You see, yes, the government decided to implement the single spine wage bill, and it brings challenges. But Fifi, that's why I said, look, out of the excess of 8.7, only 2 billion came from the wage bill. So the rest must have come from somewhere else. Let us find out where. You mentioned the subsidies, which is good. So the question is,
and the domestic interest.
I'm coming. The subsidies, where is it coming from? That's from petroleum. It's a political decision. But once you take it, then you should know the consequences. So we may agree that, look, now let's not play politics with petroleum. Yes. Let it go. But that is where we should be going. On the interest. How do they say? Now who calls that? If you borrow more, interest will be higher.
But why did you borrow?
You are borrowing.
Because?
Let me tell you why you're borrowing. You cannot say it. Let me tell you. You cannot say it. I'll say it. When you have Office of Government Machinery overspending by 650 million, you cannot say it. I can say it. We need to know why they are overspending. As a parliament, we need to call them to order. That is where, when I give the example of that, you think I'm doing politics. No, it is an office of president. It is not good for you and I, for anybody to misapply funds.
So that's the question Kwame is asking. You are saying you need to call them to order. Have you done that?
This is how we found out. We have not finished.
This complaint came up right after the elections.
No, this issue came up because our committee raised it. We have not gone further. The president has instituted the minister, asked the minister to bring a report. When he brings the report, we are going to call him to go through it. That's why we have not talked about it more, because we don't have the facts. You need to probe further. The afforestation. It is not good that somebody says, I spent 33 million and half has disappeared. This Auditor General report, it is in our interest, collective interest, that it is a bureaucratic problem. It's the state corporations, and we need to attack it. So that is not political.
While on break, too, I brought to you the attention of some other persons concerned. Larry, he says that he remembers that you said that the economic challenges of the West would not affect Ghana. How was the NPP going to fund the SSS if it were in power?
The SSS is just like any other economic policy.
Because it's the one that's taking the chunk of the money.
It is not taking the... Let's not deceive ourselves. I'm telling you that out of the excess of 8.7 billion, it's only 2 billion.
Why are you not talking about the 7 billion annual quantum that we have to raise? That's the core of the issue.
Okay, so question, how are you going to fund it? How are you going to fund it?
Allow me to make my...
I'm not stopping.
Please allow him. I'll come to you.
The issue is not about 7 billion. In any case. So you are telling me that you people were there. You decided to advise government to implement it, and you didn't know how it was going to be funded. Is that what you are telling me? That is, if you go that way, then I have a difficulty with that.
That's not what I said.
Every policy has implications. So you have to sit down and find out, we are going to implement this. It's a good policy. It's going to cost us X amount. How do we pay for it? So if you tell me...
Back to my question, how would you have
in
funded
the same way we are paying for all other policies. We will not overspend it in other areas. You need to go and clear the waste. If Office of Government Machinery is spending 650, it should not happen. It's indiscipline.
Which you suspect.
No, it's not.
You suspect the money went into campaign.
I did not say that.
No, it's in your statement. It's in your statement.
No.
Part of your statement you refer to the monies being wasted on campaign.
Because the JIDA program, I can give you an example. It was overspent by 200 million. That cannot be anything else. But more importantly, if there's indiscipline among the MDAs, we need to clear that. How come state bodies are overspending cash irregularity of 1.9.6? If I say it, you say it's politics. It is in our collective interest to collect. Now, on the matter of this judgment debt, as Kwaku says, the Supreme Court is telling us that we shouldn't have paid.
All right.
It is not an interest to say that, the guys didn't have any contract. So it is in our collective interest to make sure we recover. That is not politics. If I say, because I'm from MPP, they say we are playing politics. But no government should be happy that we pay anybody who does not have, who we don't owe. Nobody should be happy. Whether you are NDC, MPP, or CPP.
Okay. Let's bring in Fifi. Yeah.
At no point, did I in any way intimate that we should not criticize. We should not criticize government for things that should have been done properly. I've not said so. When I talk about the over-politicization, the point I'm making, and that addresses a concern Kwaku Baako raised, when it is, that's especially, and I say that because NDC and NPP have both had the opportunity to govern, and therefore we know what the reality is. So, playing to the gallery is something the two of us must avoid. Because we know the reality, you can't play to the gallery. The politics of affordability, which was introduced into this country when NPP was in opposition, which of course we also played when we were into opposition, must give way.
You in particular.
No, must give way.
Amen.
No, but that's the reality.
Amen.
This situation where it is created, everything must be cheap. Government cannot tax. Meanwhile, the people expect more expenditure. They expect roads. They expect better wages. We must come to that reality across the political divider. Listen, you cannot eat your cake and have it. If you want more development, you must be ready to pay to be taxed. If you're not ready to be taxed and government has to go borrow, don't complain about interest rate going up and don't talk about crowding of private sector. But you see, they have had the opportunity in government. So when I hear them say this, that's why I'm saying that this is obvious, what I call petty politicking. Because Dr. Akoto knows beyond every doubt that if government is unable to raise revenue and he and his team are against taxes.
No, we are not against taxes.
Excuse me, but you've criticized him. Please. You said I shouldn't interfere. So you make a reaction after I'm finished. You have criticized him in some of the recent taxes that have come up. You have said so. And said that it should not be because more competent people should be in charge. That's why we're having what we're having. And claim that it is because there are so many leakages, we should go and plug leakages. And I did point to you that if leakages were so easy to block, 8 years in office, you would have had what you call unprecedented blocking of leakages for the people of Ghana to absolutely continue to applaud you. It shows that it's not easy. Talk is cheap. But the point I'm making is that if you are opposed to taxation and government goes to borrow, you are opposed to borrowing, you obviously are doing what I call, you're showing political desperation. Because you know that the reality, you either tax or you buy.
You should use your language.
No, but no, I'm talking about the party. I'm not talking about you as an individual. I'm talking about the party. The party is involved in political desperation. Doc is not an individual thing. Please don't take it the wrong way. It is important for us to know exactly what is causing this situation. When, for example, you said that in 2012, we ran a high deficit. Yeah, we ran a high deficit because we needed to do things that we needed to do politically. Of course, we needed to do. You needed to pay workers of Ghana. You can't run away from it. You, of course, in an election year. When in an election year did you last year any government increase petrol prices? It never happened. 2004 it didn't happen. 2008 it didn't happen. 2012 it did not happen. We must, as a divide, come to an agreement that, listen, for the sake of the economy of Ghana, let us agree that these things should not be done in a political year. Then we have a bipartisan agreement. I'm saying going forward, that is the kind of agreement we need to have. Let's have an agreement on public sector wage. In a situation where every 100 cedi is going to public sector workers, whether they are Article 71 holders or they are teachers or work or this, is absolutely not sustainable. If we continue at that rate, our young people who are looking towards the future with a lot of gloom because they cannot get job, their situation is going to get worse. That's why I'm advocating that some of the solutions that are being advanced are clearly not solutions that are going to work. We need to face the reality. And that reality must also come with a certain call on the general population of Ghana. Okay. That we need to change our mindset.
I'd like us to
the mindset that everything must be easy, no taxes, provide us everything. That must give way.
Try and focus and wrap up on the solutions that are being proffered. For example, earlier you indicated that it's not about there are emergency situations that call for quick fixes, and so it's not about long term, as in what they are suggesting that block the leakages. I have many text messages that are coming in suggesting that that is a very bad way to look at it, because if you are not looking at the long term.
We are not saying that it's wrong to work towards blocking leakages. But the point I'm making is when you have a patient that is bleeding to death, okay, on a hospital bed, that's not the moment you are going to be teaching the patient about hygiene and about reform. You need to stop that hemorrhage right away.
And for how long will you do that?
The situation facing Ghana today requires that on a month-by-month basis, you raise revenue to be able not just to pay workers, but to also be able to pay for public administration and build infrastructure.
Okay. And you about paying workers
you cannot tell the people of Ghana
about paying workers and all. Some people's concerns are that they're saying, look, stop the buying of the many V8s. And they raise a number of issues that if you stop all of these, we can save enough.
All those concerns are legitimate. But you see, when you are dealing with a mountain, you don't talk to me about things that represent a pebble. They are good. You can raise them. They're nice. But please, we're talking about a mountain here. We're talking about 7 billion annual, quantum of money to pay workers.
And
you're telling me about V8 amount to what?
It starts with
no, you see,
I'm
saying that is good. But please, let's not trivialize the discussion. The immediate reality facing requires bold decisions that have to bring in taxes. Long-term, or let's say medium-long-term solution about blocking, we should continue at all stages across government. We should do so. But to create a situation where merely doing that is going to bring in the money that will be able to pay the workers of Ghana and develop this country and pay our bills is simply, not really being serious.
Dr. Akoto, you have proffered some solutions, yet you are against, for example, you are against some of the measures that are being taken, include the most immediate measures that we are aware of, including the taxes, communication service tax, value-added tax amendment bill. We are referring to the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy.
We are not against them.
Import levy.
Stabilization. We list
stabilization levy.
We list them. We are not against them.
Stabilization.
We try to tell them how to go about some of the things. Let me give you an example. There was this special import levy. First of all, I will stay on record that the so-called 300 million that they think that they are going to get, it won't happen. I'll tell you up front. But for example, if you are going to tax outboard motors, condoms, cutlasses, that is not where if you want money, that's not where you go and get money. That is the type of criticism we are saying. I don't have any difficulty with the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy. We first brought it. They adopted it, continued it, and they are bringing it back. The issue I had with the CST tax is the following. What they were bringing that we've amended was bad. They were going to tax consumers, you and I, for receiving the calls from abroad. That finally, they've changed it. Now they have a problem with the service providers. I understand the case is in court. But it's a conscious policy to tax them now that they have to deal with. When you decide on that kind of policy, you take the political consequences. But the tax on mobile phones, the rationale they brought was that prices of mobile phones have gone up. Factually incorrect. So don't tell me you are raising money, therefore you want to go and tax handsets. That is the criticism we're making. That the fact is that prices have gone down. And in any case, nobody is paying that tax anyway. The reason we brought it in 2008 was that because we're not getting money from the handsets, we said then bring it. And when we brought it, they called it the tax tax. Which is okay. But it's a consumption tax. But this amount that look, at the end of the year, I can bet my life they will not get it.
I see.
Because people don't bring mobile phones in containers. They bring in suitcases, 20, 50, and they are not taxed.
Have you heard the criticism, very finally for you, have you heard the criticism that you, in your diagnosis, you seem to be oblivious to the Eurozone debt crisis, the US fiscal cliff, which have significantly influenced on the inflow of investment?
It cannot be. It cannot be. Since 2007, the volume of investments that have come in, we've been lucky. Since then, starting with the Vodafone and then the continuation and all of that, we've been lucky. I never said that it will not affect that. In fact, on the contrary, I've indicated to the government that in going to the Eurobond market, they should be mindful of the international environment. I've gone on record to say that Nigeria has gone on the market and gotten a good deal. The timing, we have to be careful. The U.S. quantitative easing, now they've come back and said maybe they'll hold them for a while. How can I say that it may not affect us? In fact, one of the things we're experiencing now is that because our 5-year and 3-year bonds are being bought by foreigners, anytime they take it back, it affects us. You see a city depreciating.
So what accounts for some ratings that we have had over the period that are not done by Ghana, but done by other countries or other reputable institutions? That suggests that Ghana is doing well.
They've downgraded it.
No, it's not downgrade. It's not downgrade. Doc, it's not downgrade. I mean, let's be specific.
From B plus.
Let me finish. I'm coming to you finally.
The outlook is different from the grade.
It is still part of the
Doc, no. Let's be factually correct.
Fifi,
it's not a downgrade.
You'll have your 10. You'll have your 10 briefly.
Fifi,
negative outlook.
Much longer than you.
Doc, you have been wrong here.
I'm correct.
You are being wrong here.
Even the IMF. Look,
Doc, you are being wrong. Plain wrong.
Example. The IFC.
If you are B plus, you remain B plus. You have not been downgraded.
What
if you move from negative to negative outlook to, that's not a downgrade.
You see, you don't understand.
It's not a downgrade.
Okay,
if you have a B plus and you move it from B plus to B, that's a downgrade. If you are in B plus and you are negative to stable to negative, that is not a downgrade.
What is the outlook?
I'm saying that is not called a downgrade. Let's not argue on that.
Let me give you more.
This is very specific.
That's your point. But
that's not my
he's also
point. That is the
entitled to his
truth.
point.
That is the truth.
It is not the truth.
Doc knows it's wrong. He knows it's wrong. That's not about longevity.
I'm not wrong.
It's about the knowledge.
Oh,
you don't know on this one. It's not called a downgrade. You can check it after this.
All right.
It's not called a downgrade.
All right.
The economy has not been done. Doc, that's the truth. Doc, that's the truth. It's not a downgrade.
Fifi, hold it at this point.
Doc knows that it's not a
hold it at this point.
He's just trying to push it through.
But you can't force yours on him. You can't force yours on him. You can't force yours on him.
Doc, I'm not using a bad language.
Okay, so Doc, finish.
Talking about knowledge.
Finish.
Use the word
on this specific subject. You don't have to know on this. You're wrong.
Gentlemen,
you are wrong on this.
Gentlemen, please.
I won't go there, but
okay, Doc, finish. Wrap up in 2 minutes. Then I'll let him.
I'll give him information.
Okay.
And whether he takes that knowledge or not, the IFC, the World Bank private affiliate, they were going to place a 2 billion cedi bond in Ghana. Why have they put it on hold? Where's the government? If you don't know,
maybe because of your petition.
My petition.
Possibly because of the petition.
Look at where he's going.
Yeah, because there's a wait and see attitude going on.
The IMF.
Investors are having a wait and see attitude.
Let him give us the reasons.
Why? Please.
Okay.
Because
no, you should give us the reason. I'm coming. We finished this discussion here. So, what's the reason?
Go and ask them why. They said the market is not good enough. They put a hold. And why? You know who the IFC is? The international body. I'm giving advice to government. I'm not being partisan. And if he says it's not knowledge, so be it.
He's saying the major reason is the pending petition.
The current economic condition. No, it is not the best.
I say it could be.
It is not the best.
Wait and see attitude. It is not the best because of your petition.
Okay.
If when you have a fiscal deficit of 8.7, it is not the best time.
All right.
When you see what is happening in the international, it's not the best time.
Okay.
This is reality.
All right.
This is reality.
Thank you, Dr. Akutose. Now, Fifi, this is what they suggest to be the way forward. He said a number of them, but I'll just highlight the major points. They say that government must restore fiscal discipline in all departments of the public sector. Government must tackle corruption earnestly and sincerely. The government should reduce its appetite for borrowing from both domestic and foreign sources. For domestic sources, they say the more you continue to do that, you cripple local industries. They say the government must be there must be a focused plan to enhance revenue mobilization, but not through increased taxation. He's mentioned that these efforts must then be followed by a plan to revive the ailing agricultural sector of the economy. Job creation should be top priority for the government. Job creation reduces poverty, and strong local businesses are the key to ending poverty and bringing development. You should stop paying lip service to the private sector. And finally, government must appoint competent people to man the affairs of the nation rather than put square pegs in round holes as a way of rewarding party loyalists and cronies.
Samson, the long and the short of it is this, that if you leave aside the desperate politicking, the NPP and the NDC know exactly the issue. And the issue has to do with that at this material moment, this country is confronted with a humongous public sector wage that's literally gulping almost every revenue. That's not in any way to blame the public sector, but that's to say this is the reality. And that reality must be met by the need for us to either increase revenues or have ways in which the public would have to make an acceptance of the fact that certain expenditures must go, and some of them have to be critical expenditures. The expenditure one is not easy, because you are not going to be able to tell the people that your roads are going to have to be cut away. They won't understand that. So it simply means that the people must be ready for us to be able to go for at least some more taxation in order to get it done, because this is money for Ghana. You saw in their recommendation that at the same time that they were making the claim that somehow we actually are having a huge deficit, they are also telling us that we should raise revenue, we should get revenue without increasing taxes. You see the kind of double standards? At the same time also they have a problem with fast borrowing. So what exactly are you talking about? Meanwhile, these are people who know. But for the sake of politics, they are desperately saying some of this. I'm saying that we should leave it behind. And Doc, let's face it, from 1984 all the way to 2013, this economy has posted positive growth rate. There are moments where the economy has gone into difficulty. Between 1999, second half to 2000, there was difficulty. And that difficulty was transitory. 2007, 2008, difficulty. That difficulty also was transitory. But of course, for the sake of politics, what they did in 2000 was to create the impression that it was basically a cataclysm. And we did the same thing to them in 2008. I'm saying, listen, we have played that back and forth for a while. Let us try as much as possible to have core discussion on the economy. On those one, let us have consensus. There's room to play policies on other things. But on the sake of the economy, I call it the heart of the country. Let us, as much as possible, reduce the politicking so that we'll be able to do something that way. Because the key issues that have to do with youth unemployment must be confronted headlong. And that must come to bold measures. Saying that you should not borrow. Brazil did not reach what it reached simply by depending on internal taxes. They had to go what they by borrowing heavily and investing. And we cannot continue blocking ourselves. We need to have
the concern is that you are fetching water with a basket.
No, that's not true. That's not true. I've just proved to you that a lot of the loans that have been taken over the last 4 years have been for major infrastructure that don't generate immediately, but they will turn around the economy, and that will be good for the country. And I say the growth that they had in the 8 years was because of the massive infrastructural investment that was done prior to their coming. They've also done some, and we've benefited, and that's the way it must go. But the petty politicking must reduce. It's important for the sake of our economy.
Thank you very much, Fifi Kwete and Dr. Akoto, or say Anthony Akoto, or say.
But you spoke and
I was speaking and you cut in.
I didn't cut in.
No,
you finished with you and
in a
then
very
came to me.
structured manner. I can give you a minute, but in a very structured manner, I ask you to wrap up in 2 minutes,
yes.
And then I go to Fifi to
when
finish.
I was wrapping up was when he came in.
I didn't stop you, dog.
That's why I gave you the extra time. But take a minute and see what you want to say.
In the way he suggested, he should stop using language like desperate politicians.
Okay.
You use that language. I'm just cautioning you. You used it here.
No, but desperate politician is not like an insult of anybody. It's just like politicians who are showing desperation to come to
chosen
power.
not to go that path.
All right.
Because I think that Ghana is Ghana. And that's why the solutions we are proffering, we should be looking at them. We should be careful that we do the right things for Ghana. Nobody said don't go and borrow. We are saying that when you borrow, be careful how you use it. So when you borrow and you consume, it is not helpful. That you cannot dispute.
No dispute.
When we went to the 3 billion cedis, I was specific. I said the 1% commitment fee on the undrawn balance is a bad deal for us because of our history and because of the Chinese practice. We've been there before, we know it. Government should revisit that matter. Otherwise, we may pay 28 million. That is a positive solution. We can do the politics on the platform, but these are serious matters.
Okay.
We are not saying the economy is in trouble. Everybody knows. So, and some of the solutions will work, some will not work. Import levy on energy saving bulbs. Import levy on energy saving bulbs. That is not a positive solution, because the energy you want to save energy, you don't impose taxes on it. Outbound motors, it will be expensive for fishermen. That is the criticism we are making. So if that is bad, then we really have a problem.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We have to be careful.
Otherwise, we'll never finish.
As well. Samson, 1 minute as well.
Okay.
For the sake of equity.
Do it. For the sake of the very last one.
For the sake of equity.
Okay.
And having given me the 1 minute,
I
choose not to exercise it. in order to let the MPP know that the back and forth must stop. Thank you very much. Just hold on briefly. Now, yes.
I'm going to say that.
If you can say that in a minute.
A minute.
I'll take the same thing from Kuku.
I think that
then we'll move to the next issues.
It is quite clear. Like I said, from the last 30 years or whatever, it's shown that we're facing transitional issues. On the political side, we've been seeing how to work out a transitional program. I've been involved. All of us have been involved. I think that the political economy also must be examined. What is it that we agree during the pre-transition and transition period that we should do or not do? One, could we say, for instance, that 3 to 6 months before the election, no new project will be started? Can we say, for instance, propose that 3 to 6 months before election, no new salary will be negotiated? It binds the TUC. It will bind government. You cannot initiate, so people cannot push you into that. Can we, for instance, say no major borrowing 3 to 6 months before the election? No new major purchases. I think that we can agree as a nation that it is there. So when you are campaigning, people will not push you into saying that, look, give us this other, we won't vote for you. You go to every village, whether it's NPP or NDC, they say, look, if only you can give us electricity, we will vote for you. No electricity, no vote.
All right.
And these are the people of this country who are pushing us into this thing. And I think that we must look at the political economy and the transition. That's why I'm saying there is a way forward. It's what we should be looking at and pipe down the extreme to use the petty politicking, and let Parliament take control of the oversight.
Well. We definitely have a structural problem. There's no doubt about it in terms of the nature of our economy. So in the long term, that clearly is what we have to do something about the structure of the economy. But immediately, we are confronted with certain challenges, some of which I think we can tackle. See, there's too much waste. There's too much corruption. There are too many dubious judgment debts being paid. What stops us? What do we need? Anything extraordinary from beyond the shores of Ghana before we can deal with some of these things? I think a lot more transparency and accountability will help the system. It will bring about more public confidence and trust. The difficulties are there. We have each government party is elected for about 4 years. If you are going to try and do everything within that 4-year period, you may have problems. But let people trust the government. Let people trust the state authorities. And this goes beyond just the government machinery. There's an institutional problem out there. Read the Auditor General's report. So every year, it's an annual ritual.
All right.
Why can't we take action on some of those things? It will let people say, look, in spite of the problems, in spite of the challenges, we are moving in a certain direction. So it brings trust and confidence in the system.
All right, that will tie in with our discussion on corruption, perception, and measures that are being taken to stop it or reduce it, so to speak. Now, I must announce that the Honorable Fifi Kwete has to leave us. In fact, we are greatly indebted to him because he was going for an emergency meeting but had to make time to join us here. Dr. Akoto said to understand. Will stay with us and later leave after Dr. Abuzie's centenary. He's attending the 20th anniversary of Madame Eleanor, right? Great. The MPP flag bearer's first wife. Fifi Kwete, we thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Okay. Now, we will be going into the discussion about which I post an African proverb that when the frog in front falls into a pit, those behind tread cautiously. Well, too bad the people that we have to talk about are no frogs. So, unfortunately, it appears there is no cautious treading on the matter of the sin of contempt. I'd like for you to be aware that the Supreme Court has had occasion this week also to hint that it is likely to call Sir John, that is Kwejo Owusu Efriye, General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party, to answer contempt charges because of some comments that he made. However, they were going to study the reported or alleged contemptuous remarks and advise themselves. There were rumors that he's been invited and he's going to appear on Monday. He says no summons or letter has been written to him yet. The other part of this discussion will also look at the release of the incarcerated editor of the Searchlight newspaper. Right after he walked out of the four walls of the prison, he has made some comments. I am made to understand that he's already started suggesting that or saying that he's apologizing for them if he's made comments that people don't feel they are not good. You may have heard John Ndebugre, who is a senior lawyer in this country. You may have heard Ayikwe Otu, who is also a senior lawyer in this country, and his own lawyer, Atachia, asking him to be measured and tempered, or else. And I've heard Kingsley Yeboah also say he should be careful, or else he will find himself back in Sawam or where, because he was a traveling prisoner. He went through almost all the prisons in the country. Now, I'd like to start this with Abdul Malik. Okay, sorry. We'll first of all like to start with Professor Stephen Kweku Asare. He's a law professor. He lectures in a university in the United States of America. He's also among those who have written letters to the Supreme Court asking it to do one thing or the other. And you may have heard the Supreme Court say that writing letters to the court could constitute contempt. So that's serious. So Prof will join us on Skype. Hello, Prof. Are you on? Hello, Prof. Kwesari.
Yes, how are you, Samson?
I am good. I hope you're also good, and we can hear you very clearly.
Wonderful.
All right.
Glad for this opportunity.
Okay. Now, tell us. First of all, you wrote to the CJ. You and I had an interesting discussion about that. We are told that you forwarded your letter again to the judges themselves, and now we are hearing comments or warnings from the bench that even writing letters could amount to contempt. Dr. Atta Kennedy also wrote, the Ghana Journalists Association, or a branch of it, the Editors Forum, also wrote. What's your take on this?
Well, Samson, it's most unfortunate because the Supreme Court is a court of record. And as a court of record, it should not encourage rumor mongering. If the court finds it necessary to announce that people have been writing to the justices, then the court has to name these people and release the said letters for public vetting. Otherwise, we get into an arena where we are speculating who wrote it, who is this person in this highly placed office trying to influence the court. I don't know as a fact whether they were referring to my petition, because my petition is not a letter. We must distinguish between an open letter to the court published in the media,
all right,
and a formal petition asking the court to take judicial notice of things that are happening. That's where I am coming from.
Okay.
Second, whether such letters are contemptuous or not depends on who is doing the writing and the content of what it is that they are communicating. Now, ex parte communications are clearly unacceptable. Ex parte means a party to the litigation. So, for instance, if President Mahama or if Nana Akufo-Addo or if Bawumia write to the court on an ex parte basis, that is clearly wrong. If that has happened, we need to know, because that immediately threatens the administration of justice. But ordinary people like me, like you, with no standing in the court, we have every right to write to the court, to tell the court, we think you are doing a good job here, or you think you are not doing a good job here, we think you are doing that, and so on and so forth. This happens everywhere. I sent you a letter that Mother Teresa wrote to the U.S. Supreme Court. Not too long ago, a young lady in the U.S. here wrote to one of the justices. The justice was so impressed, he sent the little girl an autographed letter. Thank her for writing her.
Okay, if I may ask this question at this point, is it your case that these people who wrote the letters you are referring to wrote about a pending matter in court?
Nobody knows because they didn't tell us. They just said people are writing it to stop. If I write a letter, to a justice and I say, "How are you? Should I stop doing that?" We don't know.
Okay.
They just come out and they say something, and nobody pushes them for more information. This is what I'm saying. As a court of record, you can't do that because then you trigger the engine of warmongering, and that is not helpful.
Okay.
People are waiting you, identify them, tell us what they said, then we can check for ourselves.
All right.
Now,
and as a professor of law, you hold the view that it is all right for the citizens to write letters about matters that are pending before a court and to the judges?
Yes, as long as you are not trying to bribe the judge. If you write to the judge and you say, "Judge, you are trying this matter, here is $500,000 if you decide it for one of the parties," that is clearly wrong. But if you write to a judge, you say, "This is important, consider that." There's nothing wrong with that. India, maybe we can learn from them. They have what they call the extraordinary jurisdiction. And that encourages people to write letters to the justices so that the ordinary people can feel like they are part of the judicial system. They can feel like this is not a strange institution that don't know what they are doing. They encourage it. It's cited and respected. Now, let me go to my specific petition and put to your viewers issues that I raised. I asked the court, where did you get the original jurisdiction to hear criminal cases? Where? Tell the people of Ghana where in the Constitution you found this original jurisdiction to hear criminal cases. Number two.
Okay, if you can hold on number one. If you can hold on number one. Are you familiar with Article 126 of the Constitution that provides that the superior courts of this country are courts of record and can commit and shall have the power to commit for contempt unto themselves? Are you familiar with Article 19, 11 and 12, which provides for punishment for crime and also gives a setting exception for punishment for contempt?
Yes, I'm very familiar with those articles.
Okay.
And those are just a constitutionalization of the common law. Those things that you were reading refer to the inherent power of the court to commit for contempt, committed within the confines of the courtroom. Nobody disputes that.
Okay, that's your interpretation.
The Supreme Court is trying a case, you go in there, they say answer the question, you don't answer the question. They say sit down, you don't sit down. Immediately they can throw you in prison. Nobody has a problem with that.
All right.
That's not what we are debating.
All right.
We are debating people doing things outside, and then you bring them in to try them on a criminal charge. That's a separate animal. And to do that, you need to have original jurisdiction. Now, the reason why it is important is because all criminal defendants have a right to appeal. They have a right to appeal. But where the Supreme Court is exercising original jurisdiction, this right to appeal is truncated. You can review a Supreme Court decision, but the review is not the same thing as an appeal. Because on a review, the same 4+1 of people hear the case. So automatically, when the Supreme Court tries for a criminal offense, right to appeal disappears. And we need to know where they are getting this power. Number three.
When you say the right of appeal, disappears, I do not find that in, is it part 5 of the CI 19, which is the Supreme Court rules that gives everybody the power to go and seek review. I do not find it giving an exception to this case. What's the basis of saying that it's not open to a review?
A review of a Supreme Court decision is not the same as an appeal. When you appeal, you go from a lower court to a higher court. That's what an appeal is. So if you put me on trial in front of a high court judge and I feel he has trampled on my rights, I can go to the Court of Appeal.
Okay.
And if I'm not happy, I can go to the Supreme Court. But where the Supreme Court restores original jurisdiction, then the Supreme Court has suspended the carefully constructed appellate architecture in the Constitution. That's a big problem.
But what do you say then?
Really?
Sorry, but running the risk of having an argument with you, what do you say then about the Supreme